College football regular season winds down, the playoff picture continues to shift. In Week 12, there are major upsets and movement in the top 25. The 12 programs involved in the coaching carousel are finally starting to settle. First, with James Franklin being named the new head coach of Virginia Tech. Franklin is one of the 7 active FBS head coaches with 100 or more wins in their school. In his first 14 seasons, he had 116 players reach the NFL ranks. With rankings shifting and the race for both the playoffs and the Heisman heating up, teams are dialing in. Welcome back to Penn State Sports Night. I'm your host, Erin Riley, joined by Brianna Langberg and Sawyer Bogaty. So how do you guys feel about the recent news with James Franklin being hired at Virginia Tech? What are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, I really like him at Virginia Tech. I think he needs to get out of the Big Ten, and he can bring a lot of recruits to Virginia Tech. So I'm all for it, and I'm excited to see him play.
Yeah, it's definitely a good deal for a depleted program that needed a head coach like James Franklin. And I personally am very excited to see him walk the team out in that first game of the 2026 season to enter Sandman. So that would be the thing I'm most excited for with that hire for Virginia Tech.
Yeah, how he took Penn State from being in such a dark era to where they are now, being contenders constantly every year. I think that this is going to work out exactly the same way in Virginia Tech and just take them to that next level. So talking about playoff predictions and going into the postseason now, what are you guys' thoughts and how do you guys feel like this postseason is going to work out?
Yeah, well, I'll start with the first 2 teams on our list, Ohio State and Indiana. The undisputed top 2 teams in the country both have had great quarterback play. First, Julian Sayin for Ohio State and Fernando Mendoza for Indiana. We'll talk about that a little bit later with the Heisman candidates, but that's really the key to success. That and good coaching. Ryan Day knows how to win, and all Curt Cignetti does is win. So I think that's been the 2 biggest things for those 2 teams at the top right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really unpredictable for some of the teams that have 2 losses and how they're going to stack up in the rankings. But I would agree, Ohio State and Indiana, they're very tough competitors, especially when they go against each other. But I think that they're very clearly the top 2 teams.
Yeah.
And with the postseason coming up and the brackets, mock brackets have been putting out everywhere, we're actually going to talk about mock brackets of our own. So I'm going to start first, and my mock bracket. I really included the 5 top, teams from each of the, different categories. So there's Georgia Tech with the, there's Texas A&M with the SEC. Mm-hmm. There's Indiana with the Big Ten, Texas Tech with the Big 12, and the Navy with the American Conference. So I think that the Navy is actually going to prevail because they just beat USF, and USF has been ranked, constantly this season. So I think that that'll play, big into their getting into the, postseason. The other 7 teams they've had strong schedules. They've shown time and time again that they are worthy of being in the playoffs this season. Mm-hmm. And I think that that is pretty going to take it very far. I don't think that Georgia Tech and the Navy are going to make it very far in the, postseason. Oregon's kind of been struggling there, so if they do face off with Georgia, I think Georgia will take that. I think Georgia could actually go, far in the postseason. Obviously, Ohio State is just a little bit better than last season. They're the reigning champs, so they're going to make it far. What do your guys' brackets look like?
Yeah, so we're going to go over to my bracket now. Looks very similar in a lot of ways. Obviously, Ohio State at number 1, Indiana at 2. I want to look at the number 3, Texas A&M. Their game against South Carolina, the crazier part for me is not that South Carolina was leading 27 points going into the half, but their resilience coming back from that. I wish I could have heard that halftime talk because they come into the third and they score 3 back-to-back touchdowns, and so that really proves, it is insane. That proves why they definitely stay at that 3rd spot. 4, I have Georgia. Then I want to talk about my number 10 seed, Alabama. Their game against Oklahoma, this doesn't constitute them as a bad team. I want to start off with that. They definitely had the ability to win that game. They had, I think it was almost over 300 passing yards in that game, which really exposed Oklahoma's secondary. But it was a messy game for them, and Oklahoma definitely took advantage of that, put them in a position where they needed to score a field goal at the end, couldn't do it. So that's why they dropped down to the 10th. Then going to my 11th and 12th seeds, I want to say that Vandy looks really good. They might be one of those teams that coming into playoffs, you would say they're going to lose in the first round. They're not that caliber of a team. But I want to say they win that first game. 12, Tulane, don't think they're going to make it past the first round. Let's be honest. But that's what I think it's going to look like.
Yeah, so as for my bracket, we all actually had the same teams in the top 4. I actually flipped Georgia and Texas A&M. A&M's game against South Carolina, yes, they did win, but as Brianna said, they were down 27 points going into the second half. Was that a bit of a fraud check? It might be. So I'm gonna put A&M in the 4 for now. If you look at that 5 versus 12 game, I have JMU out of the group of 5. I think they have been the best group of 5 team. I understand that they play in the Sun Belt, and I understand they don't have those convincing wins that Navy has. But I think JMU is the best team. And I think if you had a matchup between JMU and Navy, JMU would come out on top. As for Texas Tech, they've looked very, very good. Jacob Rodriguez is one of the best defensive players in the country. In the 9 and the 8, this would be an absolute barn burner of a game if we had Notre Dame and Oregon, Dan Lanning and Marcus Freeman squaring off, and whoever would win that game to have to go play Ohio State would be very, very difficult. As for my 10 and my 7, it's actually a rematch of what we had this past week in between Oklahoma and Alabama. Like you said, Alabama struggled. If they lose to Auburn in the Iron Bowl at the end of the season, they're going to be a 3-loss team. Are they out of the playoffs?
I don't know. That's a good point.
Right? You'd have a loss.
They could be.
You'd have the loss to Florida State at the start of the year. You'd have the loss to Oklahoma, and then you'd have the loss to Auburn.
Yeah.
I don't know where they would put them.
They might be out of the playoffs.
Would they put them ahead of a 2-team?
Well, we saw them ahead of an undefeated Florida State team back when the bracket was only 4 teams. But then as for my 6 and my 11, I have Georgia Tech and I have Ole Miss. Ole Miss has looked really good. Who knows where Lane Kiffin will be coaching next year? As for this year, him and Trinidad Chambliss, they look solid. And then Georgia Tech out of the ACC. I think they're the best team in the ACC. Almost fraud checked versus Boston College. Had to kick a game-winning field goal.
Yeah.
So could be trouble there, but Haynes King, I think, has got them heading in the right direction. But that's where I stand with my bracket at this point.
With another college football season soon coming to an end, it's almost time to name the next Heisman Trophy winner. This season, there's been no shortage of talent and true contenders. So let's take a look into what players you guys think have met the standards to be a Heisman recipient.
Yeah, so obviously at the top of everyone's conversation, you have saying for Ohio State and then Mendoza at Indiana. If you look at their stats, you compare them on paper, they look pretty similar, pretty close. I will say that Sayin is a more efficient passer. He has an 80% completion percentage. But it really comes down to those big Heisman moments, like we saw with Mendoza in that game against Penn State, bringing his team down the field in 60 seconds and that huge play at the end of the game to get them that win. So Sayin's going to have a play like that somewhere at the end of the season, or it could really just come down to the Big Ten championship game. So for me, I would say right now Mendoza, but I think there's still potential with Sayin.
Yeah, look, those are definitely the 2 top candidates, but I'd like to direct the attention to the 2 guys at the bottom of our graphic. First, Jacob Rodriguez on the left. Yes, he is a true defensive player. And yes, no true defensive player has ever won the Heisman. Obviously, Travis Hunter won it last year playing wide receiver and defensive back. But he is, without a doubt, the best linebacker, the best defensive player in the country.
Do you think a defensive player could win the Heisman this year?
Whether I think he can or not, he has to be in the conversation because of what he's done for Texas Tech.
Yeah.
I don't think Mendoza and Sayin have stood out enough. They haven't done enough. They're both under 3,000 passing yards, and we're almost at the end of the season. I don't think they've done enough. If you're looking at a true Heisman candidate, it's the guy who's got 100 tackles, 4 interceptions, 4 forced fumbles. Oh, and he scored a touchdown last week. So I definitely think he needs to be in the conversation. And then the other guy is Marcel Reed from Texas A&M. Different from Mendoza and Sayin, more of a dual threat guy. Yes, he has less passing yards and less passing touchdowns, but he's got 400 rushing yards to go along with 6 rushing touchdowns. So I think his name needs to be thrown in the conversation as well. But look, if I had to pick right now, I would say it's Mendoza.
Yeah, I mean, Mendoza throwing down the field, like you said, in that one just drive, that was absolutely insane. Everyone thought really the game was over. And over here, he's throwing dots, making it toe line touchdown. Insane. And mentioning his offensive player, I think that's very interesting to see, somebody different and kind of in a different position to win the Heisman. With just 2 weeks in the regular season, the playoff picture is far from settled. Every game from here on out will determine not only where teams land in the postseason, but which programs begin their off-season earlier than anticipated. For Brianna Langberg and Sawyer Bogaty, I'm Erin Riley. Have a great night.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into this edition of Penn State Sports Night.
For more content like this, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, give us a like, and follow our socials down below.
And as always, we are
Penn State Sports Night.